Am I the a-hole for kicking my mother-in-law out of my house after she tried to control my wedding? I am 29, female, am engaged to my fiancé, Danny, 31, male, and I just had a major blow-up with my future mother-in-law, Kathy. Long story short, I ended up kicking her out of my house, and now I'm questioning if I completely overreacted. So, here's the situation. Danny and I have been together for 5 years, and I've always gotten along fine with his mom, Kathy, though I've never been super close to her. She's one of those people who can come across as a bit overbearing and controlling, but you can usually just brush it off, right? Like, oh, it's just how she is, no harm done. I thought we had an understanding, especially since Kathy has been a little extra when it comes to wedding planning, but I always assumed it was just her trying to be involved. I was wrong. Our wedding was supposed to be this beautiful, intimate celebration in a small vineyard just outside Boulder, Colorado. Danny and I both loved the place, serene, quiet, and perfect for the vibe we wanted. We'd spent months planning it, and everything was coming together perfectly. I had everything under control, or so I thought. Enter Kathy. Kathy's been a lot more vocal about the wedding details lately. At first, I thought she was just offering advice, but soon it started to feel more like demands. She's been pushing for certain things that Danny and I never agreed to, like insisting on a huge guest list, even though we both agreed on keeping it small. We wanted it to be a casual, low-key affair with just our closest friends and family. Kathy, however, started inviting distant relatives, some of whom I've never even met. When I pointed this out to Danny, he promised to talk to his mom about it, but as we know, that doesn't always go as planned. Then came the dress fiasco. I'd already found my dream dress, a simple, elegant gown from a boutique in Denver. It wasn't the traditional big wedding dress, and I loved that about it. But Kathy, being Kathy, had other ideas. She started sending me links to dresses that were completely not my style, think sparkles, puff sleeves, and layers of tulle. Every time we spoke, she would ask me about the dress and subtly make comments about how she couldn't imagine me in something so understated. I told Danny I wasn't comfortable with her pressuring me, and he agreed to talk to her. But when I spoke with Kathy directly, she'd say things like, "I just want my son's wedding to be special," or "Don't you think you should wear something a bit more formal?" I tried to be patient, but I could feel my blood pressure rising each time. Fast forward to last week. Danny and I were having dinner at our house when Kathy showed up unannounced. This wasn't entirely unusual, she often pops by to check in on wedding things, but this time it felt off. She walked straight in with a huge folder in her hands, filled with what I can only describe as her vision for the wedding. This was the moment I knew things were getting out of control. "All right," she said, sitting down at the dining table, "I've been thinking about the wedding a lot. I've put together a list of vendors that we should definitely consider. I've already called a few florists and caterers, and I have some suggestions for the ceremony layout." She handed me the folder like it was a school project. Now, I'm normally a pretty easygoing person, but this was crossing a line. I stared at the folder in disbelief. I mean, this was my wedding, and I hadn't asked for her help. I hadn't even asked for her opinion. Danny had made it clear to me that he didn't want any part of the planning, so I was handling everything on my own. It was supposed to be a fun, collaborative thing between me and him, but now Kathy was acting like I was incapable of doing it without her. I tried to stay calm. "Kathy, I appreciate that you're excited about the wedding, but I've already chosen our vendors. I've already planned out the ceremony. I really want to keep this between Danny and me." I didn't want to sound rude, but it was clear she wasn't going to back off. She smiled, that smile I know all too well, where she pretends to understand, but in reality, she's already planning her next move. "Well, I just think you should reconsider. I'm sure you'd want everything to be perfect for Danny. You don't want to disappoint him, do you?" I felt my temper flare. Danny and I had discussed the guest list and every other major detail. This was my day too, not just his, and I wasn't about to let her turn it into a circus. "No, Kathy, I don't want to disappoint Danny. But I do want to make my own decisions about our wedding. We've got it covered." I stood up from the table, trying to signal that the conversation was over. But she wouldn't drop it. "I'm just trying to help. I'm the one who knows how weddings work. You're not from a big family, so you don't understand the importance of having everything just right." Her tone was condescending, and it felt like a punch to the gut. At this point, I was beyond frustrated. "I do understand the importance of this wedding, Kathy. I've spent months planning it. So, no, thank you, but I don't need your help." Her face hardened, and for a moment, I thought she was going to get up and leave. But instead, she stood there for a second, then very calmly said, "Well, I just thought I'd make sure it's a wedding Danny would be proud of. After all, it's his day too." That was the last straw for me. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, and I wasn't going to hold back anymore. "You've been trying to control everything about this wedding since we got engaged. I'm done with it. You need to leave." Danny, who had been quietly watching this whole exchange, finally stood up. "Mom, I think you've crossed a line," he said, his voice unusually firm. "You need to respect Allison's wishes. She's in charge of the wedding planning." Kathy was stunned. "So, what? You're just going to let her do whatever she wants? This is your wedding too, Danny. Don't let her make all the decisions on her own. At this point, I couldn't stay silent. Kathy, you've had your say. Now it's time to leave. I'm done with this. She stood up, her eyes blazing, but instead of arguing further, she grabbed her things and stormed out of the house. I'll never understand why you two are so stubborn. This isn't how a wedding should be, she muttered as she left. Once the door slammed, I collapsed onto the couch, exhausted. Danny sat next to me, looking as shocked as I was. Allison, I'm so sorry. I never thought she'd take it this far. I'll talk to her. No, I interrupted. No more talking. I'm done, Danny. She can't keep doing this. The thing is, I love Danny, and I want to spend my life with him. But I don't know if I can keep dealing with Kathy's overbearing behavior. I've tried to be patient, I've tried to include her, but she just doesn't know when to stop. I told Danny that I needed time to think about everything, and we haven't spoken much about it since. So, am I the a-hole for kicking Kathy out of my house after she tried to control our wedding? Am I being unreasonable for drawing this line, or should I have just let her have her way to keep the peace? I feel like I'm stuck between my relationship with Danny and my own sanity here. Please, tell me what you think.